Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and in this video, I'm gonna give you my top 10 romance books of all time. So this was super difficult for me. Like, obviously, I've read a lot of romances and I have loved a lot of romances. So just picking 10 was a feat and a half, I tell you. To make it a little bit easier on myself, I decided to make this video just about like contemporary set books, meaning I have straight up contemporary romances, but also dark romances, and also like paranormal romances where it's clear that the characters are supernatural, but the rest of the world is in a contemporary setting. So that means there's no fantasy romances in here, there's no historical romances in here, and any other like romances with a big giant paranormal world I also didn't include. So I hope that makes sense. Are there any other subgenres I didn't include? Yeah, those are like the biggest ones. So if you're interested in finding out my top 10s for my fantasy romances or historical romances or any other subgenres, or if you want like a top 10 of dark romances or a top 10 of paranormal romances, leave those in the comments below. So for now, I have 6 straight up contemporary romances, 2 dark romances, and 2 paranormal romances. I'm going to talk about them in that order. So I'm going to start with the contemporary romances. I'm going to just so I'm a little washed out when I'm not holding a book, but when I'm holding a book, it's better. You'll see. Anyway, these are really in no particular order in the categories because that would have been that would have been too difficult. So let's just get started. Actually, I have a couple sports romances in here, so let's talk about the sports romances first. 4 of the 6 are sports romances, so I guess we find out my favorite subgenre is sports romances. So let's get started with The Deal by Al Kennedy. So I'm gonna refrain from using the words "I love this so much." Obviously, these are my top 10 romances of all time. I love them all, so I'm not gonna keep repeating myself for every book. So The Deal I read last year. It was obviously in my favorite books of last year. So The Deal, you follow Garrett and Hannah. Garrett is a hockey player and Hannah is a music major, and both of them are in this class, and almost everybody in the class is failing except for Hannah, and a person also failing is Garrett, and he needs to have his GPA up to a certain point to keep playing hockey. So when he realizes that she's the only one who aced this test, he asks her if she wants to tutor him. She denies him, and he keeps asking her. And one day he finds out that she has this crush on one of the football players. So he decides to set up this deal where he will fake date her, because his theory is if he fake dates her, since he's so popular, the football player will be interested in her, and then in return she will tutor him. So she reluctantly agrees, and during the tutoring they become really good friends. And then she confides in him that ever since she was 15, when she was sexually assaulted, she has never been able to have an orgasm with a guy. So she asks him if he can teach her, and so that she can be more comfortable once she actually dates the football player. So he decides to help her, and he helps her in like the best ways. Like, he makes sure to research a lot and then tries to make her as comfortable as possible. And then of course they fall in love. I really love this dynamic because one of my favorite TV shows of all time is One Tree Hill, and obviously one of my favorite couples in that show was Naley, and that was a athlete getting tutoring from a girl and then they end up together. So that dynamic I always tend to love. And I really love, like, Garrett in here is just a gem to me, even though he's obviously a college kid, and he's just like perfect in my opinion. And I really love their romance together. I really liked everything about this book. One important thing in all these romances is the reason they are all in my top 10 is that I love both characters and I really love their romance. Like, those 3 things I have to appreciate, because if one is missing, then they cannot be in my top 10 really. So yeah, Hannah I also really loved. I also, since this is a series, I always love seeing them in the other books. So that to me is also an indication. Like, if I get really happy seeing a couple in later books, that I really have fallen in love with the couple. So yeah, if you have, for some reason, have not read this yet, I would say definitely read it, because it definitely does hold up. I don't know. I think they did change a little bit of some of the wording, if I remember hearing that correctly. But yeah, I read it in 2023 and it still holds up, even though this was written in 2015 originally. Next is, of course, The Right Move by Liz Tomford. This was my favorite book I read last year, and what can I say about this book? Like, this is popular for a reason. This is a lot of people's favorite romances for a reason. I think this is just about perfection. In fact, I think if I had to pick a favorite out of all of them, I would probably be it. So this is a basketball romance. You follow Ryan and Indy. So Indy is the best friend of the heroine in the first book, and some stuff happened in the first book where now she needs a place to live. And since the heroine from the first book used to live with her brother, but now she's living with her boyfriend, she knows her brother has a spare room. So she asks Ryan to take Indy in, and Ryan really doesn't want to, because first of all, since he is so famous, he really values his privacy, and he was willing to live with his sister since that's his sister, but he really doesn't want a stranger in his house. And also, him and Indy had some awkward interactions in the first book, so he really doesn't want to, but since she's his sister, he reluctantly agrees. But he's set up some ground rules for Indy, like, I'm gonna make the rent for you as cheap as possible so you can move out as soon as possible. And he has like this list of rules that she has to abide by. And he's like very strict and regimented in general. And she is just like a ball of sunshine. Like, she basically is like a wrecking ball, and like, she's come to like basically flip his world upside down. Also, he's the captain of his basketball team, but his general manager feels like he is not a good one. And one of the reasons for that is that he's 100% focused on basketball. He doesn't have anything other than that going on. So Ryan thinks it's a good idea to have a girlfriend, but obviously he doesn't have one, so he asks Indy to be his fake girlfriend. So this is like some of my favorite tropes of all time. It's roommates to lovers, it is fake dating, and once again, I really, really loved Ryan. I really, really loved Indy. Actually, a fun story. I actually read both of these in the same vlog. That was a very good vlog for me, so I'll leave that linked for you if you want more of my in-depth thoughts. And this is just like a beautiful romance. Like, Ryan is the perfect guy in my opinion. Like, he's the blueprint for what every guy should be in my opinion. And it's not because he's rich, it's not because he's a famous basketball player, it's because he does little things for the people he cares about. And that is just, I love that so much. This was beautiful, and it's very popular for a reason. Another book I read last year is Powerless by Elsie Silver. This is the third book in the Chestnut Spring series, and this is another hockey romance. So you follow Jasper and Sloane, and Jasper is the adopted Eden sibling. So basically, when he was a teenager, something happened and his parents were not really taking good care of him, and then Beau, one of the Edens, realizes that, and he asks his father if Jasper can live with him, and Harvey agrees. So that all happens when Jasper is 15. And the Edens also have a cousin, Sloane, who visits them every summer. And then when she's 10 and Jasper is 15, she sees him for the first time and she falls in love with him right away. But of course, nothing happens. She's 10, he's 15. They become friends instead. Okay, so the sun is deciding to say hi. So let me see if I can change anything. So this always happens when it's fall or winter. I don't know what is up, but anyway, moving on. So while they grow up, she made it clear a couple times that she really loves him, but he never really reciprocated that. It all comes ahead when she's like in her senior year in high school, and he's already a famous hockey player, and she asks him to go to prom with her, and he shuts her down. So eventually she just decides to move on with her life. She gets engaged, and now it's her wedding day. But on her wedding day, she gets a video of her soon-to-be husband cheating on her. So she decides to do a runaway bride situation and asks Jasper to join her. And eventually they go on this road trip together, and that's when she realizes that he has had feelings for her for years now. And I love these kinds of stories. I love pining. First of all, I love pining heroes, but I also, and I know not a lot of other people love that, I love pining heroines, because a part of me relates to that. I've done a lot of pining in my life. And obviously the best thing is mutual pining, which is definitely what happened in this book. There's some scenes in here that are so fucking hot that still live in my mind rent-free. And yeah, I love it. What can I say? And like, the Chestnut Springs in general is one of my favorite series, but this is definitely my favorite in that series. Pucked by Helena Hunting. So this is a hockey romance again. And this was also written in 2015. So a lot of good books were written in 2015. So basically this is a book that really snuck up on me because when I first read it, I actually read it for a vlog, which I'll leave links for you, of course. I gave it 4.5 stars because there were some things that were bothering me about the book. But those were like side things. But I found that like throughout the months, I could not stop thinking about Alex and Violet and their romance. So it obviously ended up being a 5-star, and now it is one of my favorite romances because I just love these two so much. Like, yes, this book is not perfect. Yes, it's probably not going to be for everybody, but it is definitely for me because I just fell in love with both of them and with their romance. Basically, you follow Alex and Violet. So Violet has a stepbrother who is a hockey player. Her mom wants her to go to a game with them, so she does, and there she has sworn off hockey players because she used to date one and she just thinks they're all players, especially since her stepbrother is a giant player. She constantly makes fun of him for that. After the game, she meets the captain of the team, Alex, and she realizes he's not as dumb as what she assumes a lot of other hockey players are like. So they have a one-night stand together, and it's amazing. He has like a giant dick that she really loves, and she is so funny. So I just found myself laughing out loud so much throughout this book. So she just thinks, okay, one-night stand, that's it. But Alex cannot stop thinking about her. So he falls first and falls very, very hard because he pursues her endlessly. Like, he wants to date her for real, and she constantly keeps rejecting him, but he is not deterred. So I just love that. I love that in a man. Like, he knows what he wants and he's going after it, and doesn't matter. Like, and he knows, obviously, sometimes it goes a little bit too far, but not in like a gross way. I think it's like in an adorable way, in my opinion. Yeah, obviously they end up together. I believe they have maybe 1 or 2 more books about them. So I really should continue on with the series because I really want to read more about them. Yeah, this was great. Like, Alex is my perfect man. Like, I just love everything about him. And Violet is hilarious. Like, I thought, like, as much as I loved Alex, I loved Violet just as much. So that's why it's one of my favorite romances. Another book I read this year is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. So I read, prior to reading this book, I read 2 of her other books, and I always loved her writing style. I always thought, like, I could always fly through them, but I never really had a good favorite until this one. This, to me, encompasses everything I love about her writing style and about romance in general. You follow Emma and Justin, and Justin one day writes on Reddit, he asked a question, and while, like, in his story, he also reveals that he's basically the guy that women date before finding their soulmate. Like, that has happened to him like 3 or 4 times. Emma reads that, and she has had similar things happen to her, where she's the girl guys date before finding the one. So she decides to message him to tell him that, and they message back and forth, and they really like each other. So eventually Justin tells her, you know, why don't we just date each other and then break up, and then maybe our curse will be lifted because then both of us will find the one. So she's a traveling nurse, so it's easy for her to go to where he is, so she decides to do that. And they have like this whole list of rules where they have like 4 dates in a month, and then they have to kiss at one point, and then they will break up. But of course, things don't go that way. They obviously fall in love. I love how much heart this book has. Both of them have a lot going on. She has big mommy issues. Like, her mother is a horrible mom. Like, that has shaped her as a person. She has some mental health issues because of that. And Justin, his mom, is going to jail for something she did. And now he's in charge of his 3 younger siblings. So a very big responsibility on his shoulder, even though I think he's like 29 or 30. Like I said, this book has a lot of heart. I really loved it. And yeah, I would be surprised. So obviously this book and this one I only read this year. So I cannot say for sure if like in 2 years time they would still be in my top 10. But for right now, I cannot imagine this not being favorite romance of all time. So that's why I put it here. Definitely looking forward to rereading this one in the future. And once again, Justin to me is like a perfect guy. Like, I just love how honest he is, how he knows what he wants from the beginning, and he's not at all shy to tell Emma that. And I actually like in this book that she's the runner as opposed to him. And I think that is also why I love Puck so much. I just love romances where the guy knows what he wants and it's the girl that is fleeing and not sure of what she wants, because obviously usually it's the other way around. So I tend to like these mature heroes. I also really love the fact that this is, especially when we get into like the dark romances, stuff like that, this is like a guy I would 100% date in real life. Like, I would be the luckiest girl in the world if I could get a guy like Justin. So that is also why I really love this book. Twisted Games by Anna Huang. I love this book. I love it so much. So obviously this is a very popular one. So this is the second book in the Twisted series. It's definitely my favorite. It's my favorite Anna Huang. So you follow Bridget and Reese. Bridget is a princess from like a Genovia type country. And Reese has recently, so basically her bodyguard, her usual bodyguard, is going on paternity leave. And then he goes back to Eldora, where they're from. So, and since she lives in the US, she needs a new bodyguard, and now Reese is assigned to her. Reese is this handsome 10-year older man, and he's very strict. Like, where her usual bodyguard was a little bit fast and loose with the rules, Reese is like, no, you have to do this, and no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And she's not used to that. So they clash a lot. Because of that, she gets a little bit isolated, and he is doing things to hopefully make her feel a little bit less isolated. And it's that romance. I love this so much. This is a princess bodyguard trope, which I tend to love, or any type of like bodyguard trope. Oh my God, look at, okay. I'm getting so washed out. Anyway, moving on. Like I said, I tend to love those. And what I really love is how this book plays with dynamics, because obviously technically she's not only his boss, but she's a princess. She's gonna be queen. And he is, you know, a bodyguard, which obviously that is a power imbalance. But in the bedroom, girl, in the bedroom, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's the boss, which I just love that. I love that so much. Like, I love how she plays with those power dynamics in here, and it's just amazing. It's so good. And what I also like, this obviously forbidden. And while reading it, you're like, how can they ever be together? Because there's rules set up of what kind of man she's supposed to marry, and it's definitely not her bodyguard. And I always tend to like those stories where they actually have to overcome all those rules, that like the forbidden aspect of it and all the adversities. And this is just amazing. And I always tend to like a guy named Reese. In fact, there's another guy named Reese in here, and it's not Reese from Akhtar, obviously, because that is a fantasy romance. Oh my God, this is annoying. Okay, let's see. Will this help? I'm like a ghost. Okay, maybe. Will that help? No, not at all. That will not help. Okay, I just moved locations because this is ridiculous. I think I'm just gonna have to figure out a way. Usually filming in the mornings helps, but I was too lazy today. So anyway, we switched locations, that's fine. So, okay, but now you cannot see this book. So I'm gonna put a picture, you know, professionalism. Anyway, so obviously Twisted Games, I love it. What can I say about it? I think I said all there is to say. If you for some reason have not read the Twisted series, please do so. It will change your life. Moving on to the dark romances. I have two dark romances. The first one is, you can also not see that, The Bully by Sophie Lark. So, okay, so The Bully is a culmination of, let me count, 6 plus 2 plus 2? Yeah, 10 books. So basically, The Bully is a Draco and Hermione fan fiction in a way, but you have to have read the entire Brutal Birthright series, the first two books in her, I guess it's called, and the first two books in her Kingmaker series. Actually, this just got traditionally published, by the way, and it's not called The Bully anymore. It's called Kingmakers 3, which I'll leave the picture of the new cover, I guess. And if you can, you also have to read the first two books in her Underworld series. So it is a task. It is a big feat, but that is what makes this book so good in the end, because of all the background information you already have. And that is why I love this book so much. So basically you follow Dean Yenin and Kat. And basically Dean saw Kat do something in the last book, and now he has leverage over her and he decides to blackmail her. And how does he blackmail her? He basically tells her that she needs to be his sex slave for a month. And then when she does that and does everything he wants, then he'll never tell and she can just move on and go on her merry way. But of course, they end up falling in love. Dean has been the villain in this series, definitely very much Draco Malfoy type villain. In fact, he did something very bad in the first book, or tried to do something very bad in the first book. So this is a mafia romance. These are basically the Kingmakers is a mafia school, definitely Hogwarts-like. So basically it's like the kids of mafia families, and in this school they will learn their respective roles and then they can go on their criminal ways once they finish the school. I just really love this dynamic because Dean is very, obviously he's very alpha-like. He's gonna be like leader obviously in his mafia, so he's from the Russian mafia. But Kat is she's very like tiny, like figure wise, and very shy and like demure, meek. So like when you look at it, like you can definitely see that Dean is like a tiger and Kat is like a tiny mouse. So she, like in the beginning you're like, you're not gonna stand a chance, like he's gonna eat you alive. But then by the end everything changes, like the dynamic changes because he is head over heels in love with her. So at the end of the day, even though in the beginning you think she's a tiny mouse, at the end of the day she has him by the balls and he will do anything and everything to please her, which I just love seeing that. I love like a strong man taken to his knees by a seemingly weak girl. So this was amazing. Amazing. Okay, next obviously is God of Fury by Rena Kent. So once again, the 5th book in a series, and I would 100% recommend reading the first 4. All of them are dark romances. It's also a mafia romance because Nikolai is in the mafia. So basically in this book, in this series, you have 2 colleges. This is set in the UK, so 2 universities, I guess. So you have the Royal Elite University and the King's U College. So the Royal Elite University mostly has British students, and then the King's U College are mostly Americans. And Brandon, so this is an MM romance, by the way. So Brandon is in the Royal Elite University. Nico is in the King's U College. And Bran has a twin brother named Lan, who he had the previous book in this series. And Landon is a psychopath. He has been wreaking havoc, and especially for Nico and his friends. But Nico is very, very intrigued by Bran. So Bran is this prim and proper posh guy and constantly is poking at him. And Bran really doesn't want that because he just wants everything in order, basically. And Nico is this ball of chaos. Bran always thought he was straight, or in fact, he thought maybe he was even asexual. And Nico has always known he was bi. So Nico constantly is flirting with him and trying to get him to do stuff. And Brandon is not interested until one day they have this hot, amazing kiss together. And then Bran eventually agrees to just doing like physical things together. He's not interested in a boyfriend. He doesn't want all that. And especially not with Nico, who's basically an enemy of his twin brother. Even though they have issues, it's still his twin. But of course, eventually they do fall in love. This is very dark, especially like it deals with heavy topics. It has trigger warnings, so if you have any triggers, make sure to read that because you're definitely gonna need them. This book broke my heart. I have not stopped thinking about this book ever since I read it, and I have not stopped thinking about Bran in particular. And I love both of them. They are so opposites attract, but they work together so well. And once again, I loved seeing them. So there's only one book for now after them, and I loved seeing them in that book, and they just have a chokehold on me. I just could not stop thinking about this book, and it's definitely a favorite for a reason. Yeah, I would recommend all of these, honestly. What was that? I think somebody's starting to drill. Yeah, someone's drilling. Okay, hopefully they stopped. So yeah, beautiful, heartbreakingly beautiful story. Now for the paranormal romances. The first one is The Ex-Hex by Aaron Sterling. So I don't know what it is about this book, because objectively, yes, there are better romances out there, but I don't know, just for some reason, this worked for me 100%, and it has been a favorite for a while now. I think the reason is it reminds me a lot of two of my favorite shows of all time, and Reese, for some reason, is just the type of hero that I love. And once again, I loved both Reese and Vivi very much and their romance, and I have reread it, so I know for sure this is definitely one of my favorite romances of all time. So you follow Reese and Vivi, and 9 years ago, they had this 3-month thing where they fell in love, and it was like a beautiful, magical time. Both of them are witches, by the way, so this really reminds me of a mixture between Charmed and Gilmore Girls. Like I said, two of my favorite TV shows of all time. So like I said, 9 years ago, they had this beautiful, amazing romance until Vivi finds out that he's actually engaged to be married. So she breaks it off, and then she's heartbroken, of course, so she decides to curse him on that night. 9 years have gone by. In those 9 years, she has social media stalked him a little bit and has realized, okay, probably this curse didn't work because he's doing just fine. But now he has come back to town because he is a member of the founding family of this town, and every couple years one of them has to come back to this town in the US. He's from Wales, but they have to come back to this town in the US to amplify the ley lines. And when he's back in town, everything that can go wrong is going wrong, and Vivi realizes her curse finally worked, and now she has to help him break this curse. And of course, while they're doing that, this is going to be their second chance romance, and feelings rekindle again. I just love this book. Like I said, I cannot really pinpoint. I think the reason is the reasons I already described. This just feels like a comfort read to me. It's very atmospheric. I love this town. I love these characters. I do have to say, I have read the second book. I didn't love it nearly as much as this one. I just really love their dynamic. I love Reese, like I said, and I love Vivi. It's short. I think it had everything that I tend to love in a romance and in a paranormal, and like, it just has all my favorite things. So I would recommend it, but out of all of them, this one is, I think, it has the least likely chance of you actually loving it as much as me, but I would say give it a try, because if nothing else, I just thought this was fun, it was funny, and I just liked it. And it's not too long, so you can fly through this. And now is actually a perfect time to read it since it's October. And last but most certainly not least is Wolf Song by TJ Klune, another MM romance, and this is just heartbreakingly beautiful. Like, I was debating about this book because a lot of it is just pain and heartbreak, but at the end of the day, they do have an HEA, and it's a beautiful one in my opinion. So this is a werewolf romance. So werewolves are my favorite supernatural creatures, and this is definitely my favorite werewolf book of all time. So you follow Ox and Joe. And Ox, in the beginning of so this basically spans years of their life. So basically Ox is this 16-year-old kid who had an awful father, and he's very insecure about how smart he is and if he's good enough. And one day he meets the Bennetts, and he meets Joe, and Joe is 10. So this definitely a significant age gap, 10 and 16. Nothing happens when Joe is still underage, but Joe immediately clings on to Ox. He's like yapping his ear off, and when they meet his parents, he tells them that Ox smells like candy canes and all the beautiful things. What Ox doesn't know is that the Bennetts are werewolves, and Joe is smelling his fated mate. While they're growing up, they are friends, even though that's weird. One is 10 and the other is 16, but they become friends, and Ox becomes part of the Bennett clan. And then right around the time when their relationship turns into something that's more than friends, something horrible happens, and Joe leaves for 3 years, and Ox is left heartbroken. Eventually, obviously, Joe comes back. They do have their HEA. This is just beautiful. TJ Klune is one of my favorite authors. Yes, he wrote House in the Cerulean Sea, which is a book a lot of people love, including myself. But this is definitely what solidified him as a favorite author, because this was just beautiful. This was perfect for me. I love the way he writes in this book. I love the way he portrays the werewolves and the werewolf clan. I love the found family in here, and I really, really love the romance in here. Like I said, it's heartbreaking, and at some points you're just frustrated. You're like, no, don't forgive him. What he did was unforgivable, but at the end of the day, they are fated mates, and that goes above and beyond anything else. I just loved it. I loved it so much, but it's also very sad. Like, this is one of the few books that have made me cry. In fact, just thinking about it makes me want to cry. I do have to say I have not finished the series yet, so I've only read the first and second book. I also really love the second book, but this is just special to me. It's one of my favorite romances of all time, and definitely one of my favorite books of all time. So yeah, those were my top 10 romances of all time. Obviously, these are my top 10 right now in October of 2024. Maybe in the future when I remake this video, the top 10 will shift a little bit, although I do think a couple of them will be in my top 10 for the rest of my life. I would really love to know what are your top 10 romances of all time. I know that is difficult, especially if you have read a lot of romances, but I just really love to know some of your favorite romances of all time. If you're down there, if you don't really want to share your top 10, leave me a wolf emoji for wolf song. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did, and thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.